Hello and good morning. If it's morning for you, welcome to a little chat about the requirements to become a flight attendant in the United States. I'm really excited to be doing this. I am a few minutes late because I haven't gone live in the Facebook group in a long time, and it's different now. There's lots of different options. There's so many different things that you can do. It's just with so many different questions to answer to try to go live. But here we are. We're live now. Hopefully, I would be able to see any kind of. Oh, comments. Okay, good. I see it's going to be on the side of the screen. So, really exciting. I was thinking the other day about going live in the Facebook group again because, well, I haven't done it in a while. And I used to do this all the time. This used to be something that happened a lot. And next month, some of you might not know, but next month is our Flight Attendant Career Connection's 10-year anniversary in August. So, pretty cool. And I thought maybe it was time to do some of the things we used to do all the time. Hi, Shawnee. Oh, hi. Good morning. Aloha. So if you don't know me, I'm Abbie Unger. I'm the owner and founder of Flight Attendant Career Connection, which is the Facebook group that this live is in. Or if you're watching the replay later on YouTube, Flight Attendant Career Connection is a Facebook group. It's also a company that offers coaching, encouragement, resources, and community to aspiring flight attendants. And our goal is to help aspiring flight attendants reach their goal faster and with less frustration. So today, what I wanted to talk about, I'm going to go live every day in the group this week. Today, we are talking about the requirements to become a flight attendant. I don't have my full list in front of me, but there's a post in the group that you could find that will tell you what the topic is every day. But we're going to be talking about commuting on one day. We're going to be talking about how to find out who's hiring and how to apply. We're going to be talking about training, and we're going to be talking about confidence too, about how to be your most confident and authentic self during your interview. So, first of all, let's talk about today's topic. Today's topic is requirements to become a flight attendant. And I know that this question, if you are a flight attendant, or if you've been a flight attendant, or if you've been in the community looking and learning about how to become a flight attendant for a while, then you know that the requirements to become a flight attendant in the United States are pretty broad. So it's not a very narrow path as far as requirements are concerned, but there are so many, but that's not the case if you're new. So I want to go over what the requirements are. There's so many different misconceptions. There's so many different things that have changed over the last, several decades, even as far as requirements to become a flight attendant. And if you're wondering if you meet the requirements, or you're afraid that you don't meet the requirements because you don't have experience, you don't have the schooling, you don't have a college degree, you don't have you're not young, whatever, you think you have an accent, whatever it is, I have really good news for you. So the requirements to become a flight attendant in the United States are, first of all, you do not need any school. You do not need any education besides what your airline is going to teach you. So your airline, after they hire you, will put you through training. No matter what your experience is when you start the process, you will go through the same exact training as all of your new coworkers. So, if you are a flight attendant, you know this, or you've been a flight attendant, but even if you are a flight attendant for one airline, if you go to another airline, you have to go through their training just from the beginning. There's no way, you don't opt out of part of it or anything like that. So no training is required on your part. You do not need to go to any flight attendant school. It's not necessary. It's not a good idea. It's not advisable. Save your money and your resources. Save your resources. That would be money, time, energy, to put into applying to airlines, reading books about that airline, about their history, spending time maybe even researching through going through workbooks. I have a workbook, an interview workbook. There's other ones on Amazon too that are great. But using your resources, time, energy, money that way is so much more, is a much better investment than going to any kind of flight attendant school. So that's the first requirement is there's well, I didn't actually say what the requirement was. I said what the requirement's not. So the requirement as far as experience goes, which is what we're talking about, is just a 2 to 3 years of customer service experience. Face to face is great, but if your experience is on the phone in a call center, that's awesome. If your customer service is just internal customer service, that's fantastic too. If you work in an accounting department or the payroll department, or you help your coworkers with things, human resources, all of that works. Any kind of customer service, if you have a customer that you serve, nurses, patient care, teachers, your students, your teacher, your parents, or all your customers, any kind of customer service works and works great. If you want to be a flight attendant and this is something that is interesting to you and looks like a job you would like, then I bet you have some sort of customer service experience, because if you have the kind of personality that's drawing you towards the flight attendant career, then you're going to have helped people at some point in your life. So that works if you've been a stay-at-home mom or a military spouse or immigrating to the US over the last several years, and so you don't have traditional work experience, but you volunteered. That works. That counts. It still counts. You did it. It counts. You don't have to be paid for it. So that's a requirement, 2 to 3 years customer service experience. Now let's talk about age requirements. I have more good news if you're nervous. The minimum age to become a flight attendant, the airlines have a minimum age. Each airline has a different minimum age. There are some that hire it at 18. Breeze, I know off the top of my head, and I think there's another one that hires at 18. There are a handful that hire at 19. There's a bigger handful that hire at 20. And then the rest hire at 21. So if you're 21 or over, then you can apply to every single airline. Now, no airline has a max age. There is a maximum age for pilots. So that is true. There is a maximum age for pilots, for commercial pilots. It's mandatory for them to retire at age 65, but flight attendants don't have any kind of requirement like that, which is amazing. We used to have a pretty strict requirement that had nothing to do with health, like the pilots, because it was like 32 years old. But no longer a requirement. Now, here's the question that I get a lot in private coaching. The question says, now I know that there's no requirement saying that the airlines will stop hiring at a certain age, but is that really true? Or is that just for legal purposes? Like, do they really hire? And then they'll ask me, are there any airlines that I need to focus on because they are more open to hiring people that are over age 30, whereas maybe other airlines are not as open to hiring flight attendants over age 30? And again, good news. Like I said at the beginning, 10 years, been doing this for 10 years. I've been in aviation since 2006. I've been doing this since 2013. So I have helped thousands of flight attendants navigate through their interview process and land their dream job. Now, I have never, ever, except for one, I've never, ever encountered any sort of feeling that felt like they the age could be a thing. So that means I've helped aspiring flight attendants into their 70s get hired at all the airlines. So there's no stigma. It's not just a lip service thing like, well, we don't have any minima, we don't have a maximum age, but we kind of don't hire over 50. No, nothing like that. Nothing like that. You can go and be hired by any airline. My favorite story is about an Alaska flight attendant. He was not a client of mine, but I saw a news article about him. He was hired, I think, 20 years ago, and he was in his 70s and he's still flying. So now he's in his 90s, which is just amazing. So, because we see stories about flight attendants who are older, a lot, but a lot of times they've been flying for 50 years. So they started at 25 and now they're 75 and they've been flying for 50 years. They didn't get hired recently, right? They got hired back when there was an age limit. But I love that story because he was into his second or third career and was able to be hired easily, still flying, having a full career, which is really, really cool, really exciting. As far as I know, he's still flying, unless he's retired recently. So that, I love that story. Back when Virgin America was hiring, which was years ago now, I did get the vibe sometimes that they were looking for a certain look to match their brand. Now, this is just my personal, completely personal. Like experience is I did kind of get that feeling from them, but they weren't really based. I mean, they were based in the US, but their branding and all of that was not US born and bred, right? And so I did kind of get that little bit of that vibe that they preferred a little bit younger, funner, blonder of of a flight attendant. Now, I actually know people who fly for them who are not young and blonde. Uh, so it wasn't just like an across the board, but in full disclosure, that was the only time I kind of noticed maybe, but they've been absorbed by Alaska and none of that has lasted as far as I can tell. I've never ever gotten any kind of weird, not weird, or any kind of like cause for pause from Alaska. So I hope that maybe helps you feel a little bit more confident. So any airline is available to you, no matter what your age is, as long as you meet the minimum. Now let's talk about the other things that are requirements. Let's talk about passports. Okay, passports. Are you required to have a passport to be a flight attendant? So this one is, it's like a yes and no. So to be a flight attendant, you need a passport. But you don't necessarily need a passport to be hired as a flight attendant. So when you go into the job description and you look at the job requirements for the specific airline that you are looking at the moment, there will be something in there about a passport. And it'll either say that you must be able to obtain a passport, or it'll say you must be holding a passport. Some airlines say that you must hold a current passport with at least 36 months or at least this amount of months left in the passport. But all of that is in the job description. Some airlines will say must be able to obtain a passport required before training, which means you can apply today if you don't have a passport in hand, but you know that you need to get yourself a passport before. Now, here's the thing. So do you have to have a passport to apply? Not everywhere. If it's in the job description as a requirement, yes. JetBlue is a big one. They want you to have a passport in hand. If you apply and you don't have your passport and you say you have your passport, at one step coming up pretty quick after that first application, they're going to ask you for information from your passport. And if you don't have the information from your passport, then you will get a TB&T. Thanks but no thanks, no thank you letter. And when that happens, it starts your 1 year clock before you can reapply. So even if you did get your passport and they open up applications again in 8 months, there's a good chance you're not going to be eligible to apply. Whereas if you had just waited and followed their guidelines, then you would be able to. Now, if you happen to do that, I haven't noticed that it negatively affects you down the line, like where they're keeping track and they're like, you applied 3 years ago without your passport. Now you're trying to come in here. I've never seen anything like that before, but it can just slow your timeline down. Now, passports right now, I keep seeing news articles about how long it takes to get a passport. So one thing, remember we talked about there's other ways to use your resources besides flight attendant training school, which is a bad use of your resources. A good use of your resources would be to get your passport. Go ahead and get your passport. Yes, they cost money. I think it's like $110. So if you don't have that today, I would make that a goal. One of my first goals would be to start saving up for my passport. Because if you come to a place where you have already been offered a job and they want to put you in a training class and you're waiting on your passport and you have to expedite your passport, get it here as quick as possible so you can start your new career, that's going to cost even more money. So if you go ahead and start today, do what you can to start saving for your passport. If you are able to afford your passport today, please go ahead and get it. Do not wait. Don't say, well, I don't want to waste my time or money and get a passport. I might not get hired. First of all, just get your passport. You want to travel, right? Get your passport. Second of all, just get your passport, because it's a good way to kind of put out there into the universe, a good way to give yourself momentum. It's just a good idea. And then if if you decide one day that you just want to like hop on a plane somewhere before you even become a flight attendant, now you got your passport. So go ahead and get your passport. They are taking a really long time. Now let's talk about medications and medical things. I'm not a doctor or any kind of medical professional, but another thing as far as requirements go that sometimes people Google around and find misinformation about is about medical conditions and medications. So if you Google like FAA requirements, medication requirements for crew members, or FAA medication restrictions for crew members, you'll find articles that have a lot of different things that are restricted. And that is all pilots. So pilots have pretty strict medicals. They have to pass a medical evaluation. I think it's every year. They just recently started making some exceptions for people with type 1 diabetes to be able to work as commercial flight attendants. Before that was a no-go. So there's a lot of different things that you'll find if you Google and you start reading. Now, as far as flight attendants go, we're not going to go into the pilot stuff because I pretty much just said all I know about it. But flight attendant side, again, good news. We have much less restrictions as far as medical things go, medications go. So almost everything that you would be prescribed by your doctor is going to be okay, even if it would show up on a drug test. So, for example, except marijuana, and I'll talk about that in a minute. So, for example, if you have ADHD and you're prescribed a stimulant, that could show up on a drug test because it's an amphetamine. Is that right? So it would show up on a drug test, which is like speed. So that, of course, you can't do the recreational one of it and still be a flight attendant, but you can be prescribed it and taking it under your doctor's care. So if it were to show up on your drug test, then the drug test facilitator may call you and ask for your prescription. This is not anything that you necessarily have to disclose beforehand unless it's asked. Some drug test forms that I've seen have a place for you to put medications that you're currently taking. If that's the case, you can jot it down there, but it's not something that you're bringing up in your interview or you're having to like pre-disclose or anything like that. So that's not a thing to worry about. The other thing though is marijuana. So marijuana is legal for recreational use in some states, and it's legal for medicinal use in a lot of other states. So there's a lot of ways and places that you can get marijuana to use recreationally or medicinally. Now, the FAA stands for Federal Aviation Administration. So the federal part of that is where we get stuck. So you'll take a drug test that's a Department of Transportation drug test, and it's a federal drug test. So although at the state level, some states have allowed marijuana use to be legalized, the federal government hasn't changed any restrictions on marijuana use. So because you're taking a federal drug test and you're going to be certified as a flight attendant through a federal department of the government, the state regulations, the federal trumps that state regulation. So if you are currently on using medical marijuana and that's something that you are, that you and your doctor are working together, please bring it up to them so that you can talk about options for other medications that can help with the same thing that currently is being treated. with the medical marijuana. Now, that's for that. Recreational use, you'll take a drug test. A lot of places you'll take a drug test the day of your interview. So I don't even know how long it takes to get out of your system. I'm sure we could Google it up, but just keep that in mind, that you will, there's a good chance that you would be drug tested if you get the job on the day of your interview. And so that's just something to kind of keep in mind. That's the end of that. Things may change. I don't know. We've seen a lot of things change. We see things change all the time. But for now, that's kind of where we are. And then the last thing that I want to talk about as far as requirements that I get a lot of questions about is about your criminal background. Criminal background. So I don't know why. I just like, let's talk about drugs. Let's talk about criminal background. All right. So criminal background. So when you become a flight attendant, you will go through a pretty intense background check. I mean, you're not actually doing it. Someone else is running it. It's pretty thorough background check. Again, run from the federal level, not the state level. Okay. Now, this is important if you've had something expunged. The way I understand it, I wasn't a doctor a minute ago. Now I'm not a lawyer, but the way I understand it is things that are expunged from your record that's a state process. So the state expunges it from your record, which means on the federal level, it's still visible. Okay, now that's not really a big deal, especially if whatever happened was a while ago. But the reason I want to make sure that I say this is because when you fill out your application and when you fill out your background check information, there's going to be places for you to put down any kind of background, like criminal charges or speeding tickets, any kind of thing like that. So some airlines will ask for everything ever. Every speeding ticket you've ever had, everything you've ever done, everything. Some will say, have you been pled guilty or no contest to a felony in the last 5 years, in the last 10 years, whatever it is. So just read the question and then answer it accurately. I filled out applications where I had to put speeding tickets on there that I got, back when I was like 17 years old, 18 years old. So that was over 20 years ago. And I'm having to try to remember where my speeding tickets are. But then there's been other applications where they didn't want any kind of speeding ticket information. They just wanted to know if I'd pled guilty or no contest to these list of things. Part of the reason that, one, the background check is important just to keep us safe. Flight attendants have a lot of access to a lot of secure places. We saw during 9/11 that the flight attendant access is definitely can be powerful in the wrong hands. So that's why these background checks are really, really important. That's why they want 10 years of background with no gaps. They want to make sure that you are who you say you are, you've been where you said you were, that you're not trying to infiltrate the aviation. Now, that's part of the background check. The other thing about the background check is, and why they ask about these other crimes, is Canada. Our friends to the north. They're actually not my friends to the north because I'm in the Pacific, in the middle of the Pacific. But it's kind of, of the U.S., whatever. So Canada has really strict rules as to who can enter and exit their country. And if you have been charged with or convicted of or pled no contest to a DUI, domestic violence, and several other things in the last 10 years, then Canada does not give you permission to go in and out of their country. And so that's another reason that this information is really important. You'll see in your job description that you must be able to freely enter and exit any country that our airline serves. Part of what that means is, are you allowed to go to Canada? Because when you're on reserve, you're going to just get called. You'll just get whatever trip is up next. And so it's important that you can freely enter and exit Canada so that you don't get detained when you're working a trip there. And, all of that is involved with that. So now after 5 years, if whatever this is happened more than 5 years ago, within 5 to 10 years, you can fill out some paperwork with the Canadian government and get a waiver that does allow you to go in and out of Canada between that 5 to 10 years, and then after 10 years, you're good, as far as I understand it. So that's another reason that they ask for these different things in your background. If you So there's going to be a place on every application where you put something down, where they're asking if you've done anything, and like I said, it's all different depending on the airline. Now, another thing I want to make sure I say is these things do not automatically disqualify you. So if you are like, well, it was expunged and I don't want to put it down because, once they see it, then they're just going to throw it out and they're not even going to try. And maybe at least I can slide it past them if I don't put it down. That's not a good strategy, because they will see it. And there are some things that can show up on a background check that they're fine with, that they're okay with, depending on how long ago it was, depending on what kind of restitutions and restorations were made. All sorts of different things go into this. But if you don't put it down and it shows up, the odds of your CJO being rescinded go way up, much higher than if you disclose it and then they consider it, depending on what it is. So I really encourage you to disclose it, even if it's expunged, even if, as long as it's within the criteria that they're asking for. If they don't ask for something, if something happened 14 years ago and they're asking for 5 years ago, you don't have to go back and answer more than the question, but you do need to answer what the question is. Okay, so putting that information in there, even because part of it, especially like speeding tickets and things, is a check. Are you disclosing? Is your background matching up with what you say it is matching up with? So that can be important. So I think that is everything that I have for today as far as requirements go. These were not really the basic requirements. This was a little bit of a deep dive into some of the requirements that maybe you were curious about, or maybe were kind of like nagging you. So hopefully this brings some clarity, some encouragement, especially about the age. Maybe it gives you a plan, talking about the passports, about next steps. So thank you for spending some time with me. If you're watching the replay, you can drop replay down below. And we will be here every day this week at 8:30 in the morning Hawaii time. You'll have to do the math on that for where you are, but you can Google that too if you need to. But thank you. I hope that this was encouraging. Go fill out an application today. Talk to you tomorrow.